Am I introducing or are you?
You are.
Oh, great. Well, let me offer my warm welcome back to everybody as part of this AI forum. Our goal this year is to increase participation wildly and using different formats, namely Zoom, and we've published the whole fall semester calendar there as well. So we'll make sure that people still have awareness and see the great speakers that are coming up. And today we're fortunate to have Dr. Mike Butler speak with us. He's a member of the UND Department of Philosophy, and he and I met on a bus trip around the state of North. And that's when I learned we have an amazing colleague who joined us in our Department of Philosophy, who also has an active interest in the intersection of technology and ethics and what it means to be human. And so we're so thrilled to welcome Mike to talk today. He's also the director of our new master's program in human machine integration. And so here the humanoid robots, I can see the philosophy of those being discussed. But Mike, we're so thrilled that you would join us and eager to hear your thoughts today.
Great. Great. Thanks, President Armacost, and thanks to everybody for showing up to this online Zoom talk in the middle of a nice day in August. It's not the greatest time to be inside looking at a screen, but thank you very much for coming in to hear me talk about this. So I'll just share my screen here real quick. Here's the title of my talk. It's a little unwieldy. It's a bit of a mouthful, and I'm not even really sure how to say it out loud. But basically, what I want to talk to you about today is sort of the relationship between artificial intelligence and humanity on the one hand, and then on the other hand, the relationship between artificial intelligence research and the humanities on the other hand. So sort of the role of the humanities in artificial intelligence research. Because I think there is an important one. So anyway, I ended up with this rather ridiculous title, but I bet ChatGPT would not have come up with this, so I kept it. Yeah. Anyway, quickly, a little bit about me. Hi, I'm Mike. I'm an assistant professor in the philosophy and ethics department here at UND, as President Armacost said. I specialize in the philosophy of technology, which I approach from my background in phenomenology, cognitive science, and the history of philosophy. I'll say a little bit about those as they come up throughout my talk here today. I'm also the director of the MA program. It's brand new. It's starting this fall in the College of Arts and Sciences on campus in human technology interaction. And I'll say a little bit about that towards the end of my talk. But basically, what all this means is that I sit around and I do a lot of thinking about the way that values are embedded in our technology and how that informs the context in which we sort of live and grow. I think about the way that technological design encourages us to take ourselves up and relate to each other. And I basically just try to think about how most of us encounter technology as users or as non-technical experts and how that sort of shapes our world. So today I'm here to talk mostly about, mostly about AI. And when I'm talking about AI, today I'm largely going to be talking about generative AI and large language models in particular. So again, this is the way that AI presents itself to most non-technical experts out in the world, is we encounter things like ChatGPT or Anthropic's Claude, or maybe you've seen Microsoft Copilot, or there's even a little button here at the bottom of my Zoom window anyway, that has an AI assistant. So why am I talking about this? Everybody's talking, like, you've probably heard a lot about these things lately. It seems like we talk about them all the time, and that's partly why I want to talk about them. I want to talk about them because they are everywhere at the moment, and there's just a lot of hype around them. And so I want to talk a little bit about that hype and the pressure that we might all be feeling a little bit to understand what these things are, how they work, and start using them, right? So the pitch for using large language models is usually something like this. They're here, they're not going anywhere, get on board. In other words, you've got to figure out for yourself how to make your class, your job, your discipline, your research work with it. And better yet, you could get ahead of the curve by buying a nice suite of AI tools from the company giving you the pitch, right? I don't think we have to do this, basically. as an aside, I think there's economic reasons to kind of think that these things are not always going to be as ubiquitous as they are now. They just are too expensive to run, and they're being like in order to be offered as freely and cheaply as they're being offered at the moment. But that's a whole different talk, which I am not going to give today. But I did just want to mention that. Like, I don't think we have to buy the idea that they're here and they aren't going anywhere. That might not be the future. But anyway, today I want to challenge a different idea that's part of the pitch, and it's this, right? Uh, these tools can help with just about anything you can think of. They're a sort of universal solution to any human problem because they basically do what humans do, except they're faster, except they aren't really. They're more accurate, and they aren't really. And they're cheaper, but again, I don't know if they are. So basically, I think everything about this pitch could be challenged, but I do not have time to challenge every part today. Um, uh, I do think that LLMs are interesting. I think that they're doing something neat, but I don't necessarily think they're a panacea to every problem we can imagine. But like I said, I haven't got time to go through every point on the screen at the moment. If you are looking for a great book that does sort of go through these things, I can't recommend highly enough Shannon Valor's recent book on AI called The AI Mirror. Um, yeah, so that's that. I also want to say before I'm incredibly critical of AI and everything and the way that it's sort of being pushed on us and so on and so forth, I want to say that I think UND and the state of North Dakota more generally has been pretty smart about this so far, and that's awesome and great. I think there's been a healthy cautiousness around adopting AI and a lot of spaces like this one for serious discussion about what it is, what it's good for, what it's maybe not good for. What its sort of implications are. So I want to thank President Armacost for continuing to support this thing. Thank all of you for coming to engage in this sort of serious rational inquiry in a time of crazy feverish AI hysteria. So anyway, today the claim I am going to challenge is just this one. Large language models do basically what humans do. And then I'll try to sort of draw out some implications of challenging that claim. Okay? So the gist of the talk today is going to go like this. Artificial intelligence as it exists is not very much like human intelligence. For this, I'm going to be, diving into my background in history philosophy. We're going to talk a little bit about Aristotle for a minute, very briefly. From there, uh, we're going to make this point, right? AI is very good at some things, but because it's not much like what humans do at all, it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution to all human problems. Um, for this, we'll look at what I think is a sort of silly or kind of boring use case of AI, a case of AI being sort of shoehorned in somewhere where it doesn't belong. And maybe it makes things a little bit worse. So we'll talk about that. And then from there, we'll go to my main claim, which is that the role of the humanities here is that we should be imagining ways that artificial intelligence and digital technology more generally, right? Like I think this narrow focus on AI these days sort of limits our imagination about what else we could be doing with all of these fancy, amazing processors we've got everywhere in the world these days. But I want to think about ways that we could be using these technologies to serve human needs and ends as they actually exist, right? And I'll try to sort of share some philosophical tools for this. And then finally, I want to make the point about the role of the university and the humanities in particular in doing all of this work. Okay. So, first point, artificial intelligence as it exists is not much like human intelligence. So again, like a good philosophy professor, I'm gonna start here by just defining some terms. We got two words on the board here that seem important to me, artificial and intelligence. So let's start with intelligence. What is intelligence? Well, historically, when philosophers talk about intelligence, I think it's usually sort of associated with human beings or sometimes deities, gods, things like that. Um, it's sort of thought of as being a uniquely human thing, or at least the kind of intelligence that humans have is uniquely human. It's what differentiates us from other animals. Maybe other animals have intelligence, but it's not like human intelligence in some important way. Um, it's often associated for this reason with like sort of big nebulous concepts like rationality or consciousness or the soul on the one hand, and then also, at the more particular level, it's associated with very particular mental faculties that humans seem to possess, like judgment, analysis, belief, aesthetic appreciation, quantitative reasoning, making inferences, that sort of thing. Um, it's also, it'd be weird to talk about intelligence and not talk about the way that it's been historically attempted to measure intelligence through things like IQ or EQ or all the Qs. Um, I think this can get dangerous. I'm not the first person to suggest this. There's a classic book from 1980 by Stephen Jay Gould called The Mismeasure of Man. But again, I just want to bring that up and say, like, it has also been used as this sort of sorting mechanism for just adding a number to a person's intelligence and deciding if they're worth something. But anyway, um, the take-home point here is that generally when we talk about intelligence, what marks off humans as something special in the universe. Um, yeah, does that make sense? All right, I hope so. Okay, so if that's what intelligence is, what would it mean to make an artificial intelligence? Okay. Um, there are at least two ways that this gets talked about, right? The first is as what is sometimes called strong AI, or more often these days we talk about what's called artificial general intelligence, or AGI. And this would be an artificial system, like a non-biological system, presumably, that is intelligent in the same way that humans are, right? That could do anything that a human might do as well, or in the case of what's sometimes called superintelligence, right? Better than any human could do. Okay, so that's the big scary Terminator situation on the one hand, or benevolent AI that's going to save us and solve all our earthly problems on the other hand. Okay, so that's artificial general intelligence. Um, I don't that doesn't exist, right? That's the sort of pipe dream of a lot of AI researchers. On the other hand, we have what I'd call weak AI, or as I call it, actually existing artificial intelligence, or this horrible acronym, AEAI. Don't worry, I will never say AEAI again. I'll just keep saying actually existing artificial intelligence. But these are systems that just do some task that a human might do, or some set of tasks that a human might do. So they might play chess, or identify the content of an image, or write an email, or identify patterns in a large data set. And they might do this, as well as humans do, or close to it, or in some cases, like much better than your average human. Like certainly there are artificial systems that play chess way better than most humans can. Maybe any humans, right? Same with identifying patterns in very large data sets, right? Like they're quicker and better at this often. Um, but again, what makes them different from artificial general intelligence, and therefore better, different from something like a superintelligence, is that they're sort of task specific or domain specific. Um, this is the land where LLMs live, right? Um, so what I want to make clear is that this is sort of where we are, right? This is what we've got. We've got weak AI, or actually existing AI. Um, uh, and so that's sort of where we're at. But there is a sort of somewhat, I think, dogmatic belief among some AI researchers and many AI sort of propagandists or influencers that simply taking the AE, oh, I said I wouldn't say it, simply taking the actually existing artificial intelligence systems, actually existing artificial intelligence systems that we have, and making them more powerful by just feeding them more and more data and more computer power, is somehow one day going to lead to an AI system which is generally intelligent. And I just don't think that that's true. Um, we've built machines that are pretty good at mimicking the thing we do when we, say, write a first year college essay, or an email, right? Those are our LLMs, right? They achieve this by way of an algorithm that sort of predicts the most likely next word in a sentence in a paragraph, so on, etc. Um, and that's what it does, right? That's great, and it's interesting, and it's certainly worth thinking about. The problem comes up, I think, when we start to think that because that's the way that the computer does it, it must also be what we humans are doing when we write a first year college essay, or an email, or whatever, right? Or a poem. Like when that happens, problems start to come up because we start to think of ourselves and our problems a little bit differently. right? We start to think of them in terms of what our actually existing artificial intelligence systems can do, and we start to squeeze them in everywhere. So I think there's something crucial that's missing from actually existing artificial intelligence that means it's never going to get to AGI, and therefore something it is missing that all humans possess. So I think this line of thinking is a little bit off, right? In order to make that case, now we're going to turn to my friend Aristotle. So there he is, good-looking guy. You know, I hope somebody makes a statue hundreds of years after I die where I look like that. Anyway, that's Aristotle. So Aristotle, if you don't know who he is, he was the philosopher for hundreds of years in Europe and Christendom. So he's a bit of a big deal. But anyway, he famously sort of defined human beings as rational animals, right? This means that what sets us off and makes us different from other animals, namely what makes us intelligent, right, is that we have this extra capacity that other animals do not have, right? They don't possess. It's basically the ability to kind of observe regularity in nature and abstract principles, and then to apply that to make further inferences. That's a pretty cool power that human beings have. It allows for all kinds of neat stuff: long-term planning, analyzing the past, and making predictions about what might happen, figuring out what went wrong, right? In a vacuum, I think this kind of capacity looks a lot like what LLMs do. But importantly for Aristotle, we don't exist in a vacuum, right? We're not just rational animals. This is only half of his definition of human beings. The other half is that we're political animals, okay? And he means political in a very particular way, right? For Aristotle, we don't just have an extra capacity that other animals don't possess. We have a different function from other animals as well, right? Unlike other gregarious animals, like say bees or beavers or cows, right? We ask questions of ultimate concern. What does that mean? We ask questions like, how should we live? What is the best way to live together? How should we organize ourselves? What would be the most fair way to do that? What would be the most just way to do that? What is justice anyway, right? In other words, our rational capacity isn't something we just use alone when we're looking at nature and trying to abstract generalities, right? Rather, it's something that we do together, and we reason not just about trying to predict rainfall or whatever, but we reason about the ends towards which we might work, right? What would be the best thing to do? We live alongside others who matter to us and to whom we matter. We use reason to make claims. We care about the outcomes of those claims. So indeed, we are rational animals. But as political, our rationality serves our common interest and allows us to argue for new ideas, challenge dogmatic beliefs, posit potentially better alternatives, so on, etc. Right? This is politics for Aristotle. So the take-home point here, right, is that human beings have a shared world that matters to them, right? And that reason and shared living, or politics, right, kind of come always together in that shared world, right? Reason and intelligence are really only important for us within that context. Actually existing artificial intelligence does not share that world. There's an assumption, again, like I said, or a dogmatic belief among many AI.
Did we lose him?
I don't hear him either.
I think the LM,
he's-
the large language model, cut him off.
Not
he's
happy
listening
with not being called
and-
alive.
Mhm.
See, I don't think I have this.
I think it was actually the political component of the LLM that cut him off.
Let me see whether I can give him a call.
Yeah, I just sent him a quick note.
Hey, okay. Hi. Is this working?
Yeah,
Yep,
we can hear you, Mike.
Okay. Where did I drop out? What was I talking about? Anybody remember? Love it.
You were on Aristotle and talking about the political
Okay.
aspects.
Political aspect. So it's still on this slide. That's good. All right. Did I get to hear human beings have a shared world?
Yeah.
Yeah. AEI doesn't have that. Okay. All right. The point of this slide is just that I don't think that human general intelligence is just an amalgamation of a bunch of intelligence modules or something like that, right? To make that point, just think about it. Like, how many tasks do you know how to do, right? 100, 1,000, a million, a billion, right? Like, it's not clear to me how just piling on more and more capabilities is going to get you to something like artificial general intelligence, right? I think that human beings begin with a world about which we care, and then from there we develop the skills that our artificial systems mimic. Right? So, for example, I want to think about my niece. Her name's Nettie. She's kind of fun. She's a goofball. She's a lot of fun, but she can also be somewhat demanding. Okay, as anyone who's hung out with a 9-year-old knows. I play a lot of silly games with my niece, Nettie, and she does not like to lose. Perhaps you're familiar with a child like that. So recently we played this game called 20 Questions. Has anybody ever played this game, right? Probably you're familiar with it. One person thinks of an animal or a vegetable or something like this, and the other person asks up to 20 questions that are yes or no answers, tries to guess what the person's, thinking of, right? On the surface, this absolutely seems like something an LLM could do with my niece, right? And when the LLM is doing it, it seems like it's doing basically the same thing that I'm doing when I'm playing this game. But consider that when I play 20 questions with my niece, I'm not just predicting the next set of questions she's going to ask or the answers and hints I'm going to give her. I'm also attending to this tiny person for whom I'm responsible. I'm attending to her development, to our relationship, to her emotional and mental states, to her future, and so on, right? Our game of 20 questions is political in the Aristotelian sense here, right? It's about attending to and building the world that we share together, right? After I play a game like this, right, I might talk about it with Nettie's mom, my sister, right? I might talk about it with my friends. I might talk about it with you right now, right? I might talk about whether or not I did a good job when I played it with my niece, right? Whether I was too hard on her, or whether I was right to correct her for pouting about the game when it was too hard for her, right? We might question the very ends of even playing games like 20 questions, if they're good games to play with kids, right? If they serve the kinds of outcomes we want for our children, right? Basically, the point is our speech and our action always takes place within this wider context that matters to us and to others. And it's our shared project of shaping the context that our children grow up in, that we learn in, that so on and so forth, that we're engaged in anytime we're talking to each other. The large learning language model that plays 20 questions with my niece is not doing that. Right? Nobody who builds those things would suggest that that's what it's doing. So when we think of ourselves as doing the same thing as the LLM, even though it might look like it, right, at first glance, I think we're making a mistake. Right? And I think if someone were to say that that really is what they were doing exactly the same thing as the LLM when they were playing with their niece, I'd say that they were doing it wrong. Right? I think the key point here, right, is that context matters, right? And human intelligence arises only in a situation where context matters. It always unfolds within a world of broader concern than the immediate task at hand. Right? Okay, so I've tried to make this point. That was point one, if you recall. Artificial intelligence as it exists, I don't think it is much like human intelligence, right? I think it mimics it. It does something, but it's not like what we're doing when we're doing seemingly the same task. And that was the point of the 20 questions thing. Okay, so on to point 2. This means that AI might be pretty good for some things, right? It might be pretty nice to have it summarize. I don't get 8,000 emails a day like President Armacost probably does, but maybe AI is useful for summarizing 8,000 emails when that's what you get a day, right? But just because it's good at some tasks doesn't mean that it's going to be the kind of intelligence that's going to be useful in all kind of cognitive tasks that humans might engage in, right? And so to make that point, I want to just sort of look at a suggested use of a large language model that is in a commercial from Microsoft for using their Copilot app, right? And I want to suggest that this is maybe not the greatest use of something like this, and this is a case of sort of shoehorning it in where it may not belong. So I want you to pay attention to how AI is being used in this case, right? And if it's really doing what Microsoft is claiming it's doing, namely deepening the user's experience of, in this case, exploring New Orleans. Okay, so let's take a look. Oh. Uh-oh. It's because I went out and came back in. My sound's not on probably, right? Okay, 1 second, sorry. Okay.
New Orleans is a place where no matter how well you may think you know it, there's always something new to experience. And that's why I'm here with my sidekick, Microsoft Copilot, to help me deepen my knowledge about the city that I love. I'm Maya Jackson. A lot of you may know me from YouTube, where my husband and I share couples and family content. Now, I was born and raised here, but now I'm back because I'm gonna be taking you guys on a tour of my city, New Orleans. Of course, our city is known for its jazz music, and behind me is one of our most famous venues, Preservation Hall. And I know so many famous jazz musicians have come through here. But let's ask Copilot. There are so many legends listed here, and I think I remember my grandma talking about Charles Buddy Bolden. But let's go inside to see if anyone's performing.
What's going on? My name is Ronell Johnson of the Preservation Hall Jazz Band, and I'm right here from New Orleans.
Yay!
What's happening? My name is Brandon Lewis from the Preservation Hall Jazz Band, and I am from Los Angeles, but don't tell nobody.
All right, I'm Glenn Finister Andrews with the Preservation Hall Jazz Band. I'm from here in New Orleans.
Okay, we can stop it there. So yeah, I don't know about you, but that seems silly to me. I don't think I want to be hanging out in New Orleans listening to jazz, and then I don't know how it helps me to know that playing the trumpet requires building up my mouth muscles in the middle of that experience, right? It seems sort of like kind of boring use of technology to me. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe other people think that that's really great. But basically, I think what's going on here is that the people that are designing this stuff are kind of constrained by something of a lack of imagination, right? They're overly committed to the idea that an LLM is useful anywhere and everywhere because it's kind of like what we're already doing, right? So it leaves them to conceive of any task as one where an LLM would be helpful, obviously, right? So they turn any kind of exploratory or learning activity into the acquisition of something like facts, right? Or more data, right? things that the LLM is really good at providing, right? Um, so, what does it mean to explore New Orleans? What does it mean to explore a city? Like, I don't think they really ask that question when they start making this thing, right? But if they did, their answer seems to be something like, exploring is learning, and learning is like reading Wikipedia, right? Um, and often I think we do think about knowledge that way, right? How it's presented in this ad as a kind of basic propositional thing, right? Knowledge is about knowing facts, right? But that kind of leads us to this very strange conception of what it means to explore a city like New Orleans, right? It's something like how it's presented in this Copilot ad, zipping around a great city, looking for new facts, right? This is the way an AI system might explore a city, not the way a human might explore a city, I want to posit. Right? So I don't know about you, but I don't imagine using this thing like this. And I haven't really seen many people use Copilot this way. Maybe you have. But this basically brings us to our third point, right? Like,
So I hope you guys.
although it's good at some things, right, it might not fit everywhere. And so our job as AI researchers and especially as humanists, I think, is that we should be trying to imagine new ways that artificial intelligence and digital technology more generally could serve actual human needs and ends instead of figuring out ways to squeeze it in to anything a human's doing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this by talking about a little bit of research and a project that I'm working on at UND. And in doing so, I'm going to try to sort of share some philosophical tools for broadening our imagination about how we might use digital technology when we're trying to advance human intelligence. Okay. So in order to do that, let's ask this question again. What does it mean to explore? Well, I think it's right that exploring is learning, right? But I think that learning as the acquisition of facts is not the right kind of learning here, right? And all you really have to do is read like this much philosophy to find out pretty quickly that propositional knowledge of facts is not the only or even the primary way that most people in the humanities have thought about knowledge, right? My discipline is phenomenology, and phenomenologists like this guy, Maurice Merleau-Ponty, or Mariana Ortega over at Penn State, or Iris Marion Young, what they do is they stress the way that much of what we know, we learn and know with our bodies at the same time that we learn and know them with our minds. So knowledge for thinkers like this is more like knowing how to do something before it's like knowing facts, right? Knowing this might change how we think about what it means to explore a city. So, just think about it for a minute. What is it actually like to explore a city? You could study all the maps of a city. You could read about all the important landmarks and all the historical dates, right? You could memorize all those facts. But until you've actually gone there and walked around in it, you wouldn't really say, oh yeah, I know New Orleans, right? So let's think a little bit further about what it's like to get to know a city. I was thinking about this a little while ago when I went to Prague. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Prague, but it looks like this. It's a weird city, right? It's an old city, and parts of it are pretty alienating to a guy like me who grew up in North America, where streets are straight, right? You got these winding, narrow streets that sort of twist and turn. So I started to think about it, and I started to think like, this place is like a city of folds. As you navigate through the tourist-filled alleys, you move about by sort of constantly turning corners. And with each corner, the city kind of folds up behind you, and it unfolds in front of you, concealing one block behind you that you were just on and opening up a new environment, right? This is a lot different than simply having the city disappear behind you quickly, as it might if you were in a car traveling quickly, right? The folding and the unfolding of the city sort of suggests a new future that was not previously available. As you move around corners, the city folds itself and unfolds itself to reveal new positions and new places to move. You can't simply go back or glance back to see where you have been or forward to see where you're going, as you might in a city with straighter streets built on a grid system, like New York City, say, or Toronto, where I lived for a long time. In Prague, you actually have to walk backwards or forward to see where you're going or where you've been. The city has to be experienced this way to be seen. It has to be allowed to fold up behind you and unfold in front of you. So I think the narrow streets of Prague are a particularly good example of the way that our experience of space in cities and new environments involves not only knowledge of the environment in terms of propositional knowledge, but a development of our own sense of self in those environments, what it means to move around in those things, or the sense of what it's like to have a body there. So at first, getting lost in Prague can be alienating and worrisome. If you're accustomed to more modern places, you find yourself constantly on edge, unsure if one is moving in the right direction towards one's approximate goal. You might have to double back. You might have to check a map. You might have to look for street signs. But eventually, you learn to grasp the logic of the place simply by moving through it. As your body experiences the folding nature of the city, you come to understand yourself in the city's terms. There's a way you move your body here, and you acquire an embodied sense of the space that presents new possibilities for movement. By moving within the city in this way, you learn something that you would never learn by studying the maps of the city or by learning facts about how old the buildings are, right? You engage and understand the city bodily on the city's terms, insofar as the city becomes the current or the rhythm that structures your movement. If you wanted to build a smartphone application that supported this kind of exploration and this kind of learning, I don't think you would build Microsoft Copilot, right? It might not be a task where LLMs are useful at all, right? But that doesn't mean you couldn't think of a neat way to use technology to support that kind of learning, right? You just have to think a little bit wider, right? So we've talked about what it means to explore. I want to talk a little bit wider now about how we could use technology by asking another question, and that's, what is a smartphone, right? What is this tool that we're using, right? And to do that, I'm going to refer to the work of Albert Borgman, who's an American philosopher of technology. He was at the University of Montana for a very long time, although he died recently. And his idea of the device paradigm. So according to Borgman, most of our technology is designed according to what he calls the device paradigm. What this means is that the point of a device is to disburden a user of the work involved in a task so as to make a commodity that would otherwise be difficult to obtain readily available and on demand. A thermostat and a gas furnace, for instance, make heat readily available without the work required to, tend a fireplace. Devices are different from older traditional tools in this way. Traditional tools, he thinks, extend and enhance human power and skill, but they take a lot of work. So an axe or a hatchet make wood splitting possible, for instance, but only for someone who has learned how to use them. In learning to use such tools, qualities of wood that might be otherwise imperceptible to someone without such skills are brought to the fore. You get to know more about wood through the use of something like an axe or a hatchet. Thus, chopping wood becomes more than simply a means of acquiring fuel for a fire. It becomes what Borgman calls a focal practice, something that humans do, which focuses us and which allows the world to come into focus for us in a particular way. So it seems pretty clear to me that the way that the Microsoft people are thinking about the smartphone here and its role in exploring society is very much according to this device paradigm, right? To explore is to learn is to gain facts. The smartphone makes those facts readily available without effort, right? It disburdens us of the need to learn new skills or exercise old ones. We don't have to learn the city. It's already been learned and uncovered for us by the device. The device just gives us access to the results of that process, right? So again, I don't think that really supports exploration in the way we were just talking about in Prague, right? But does a phone have to be a device? Could it be something more like a traditional tool that extends our agency rather than replacing it, okay? And so it was based on that kind of intuition or question that I started working with a couple of colleagues on this app that we call Expert, okay? Expert is an alternative model for smartphone-based navigation aids. It's designed basically to extend our powers of perception and movement rather than taking a device approach and having the app do the work for us. it privileges the perspective of its user and aims to extend her perceptual powers, allowing her to perceive simple but rich information about her environment that would otherwise be hidden. The user then engages an enriched situation and responds to situational affordances and cues proper to the task at hand. It does this in an incredibly simple way. That was a really fancy way of saying that what this does is it delivers sort of pings, similar to sonar. So if your destination is on the left, you'll hear the ping in your left ear, right? If it's on your right ear. If it's far away, it'll be kind of quiet. It'll get louder as you get closer. It goes up in tone as well as you get closer. So the idea here, right, is that rather than offloading the cognitive labor of sort of planning the route and making all the decisions about where to go, Expert empowers a user's perceptual capacities. It extends your ears, basically, and makes it possible to hear your destination, right? And so then you can perceive information in your environment that would not be available to someone who wasn't skilled at using Expert, right? The version of the app that we're using right now really doesn't use anything that a computer programmer would call artificial intelligence, but there's no reason why you couldn't start thinking about how you might, right? But it probably wouldn't look anything like an LLM. The key, though, is that we're using it to try to extend the user's perceptual capacities rather than offloading the task of navigation completely. So we're predicting that Expert is going to decrease the efficiency of navigation, especially at first, right? Like the first couple times you use this, it's going to be hard. It'll likely take longer to find your location, but we think it'll increase your sort of awareness of your environment and your responsiveness to the things in your environment. So we're going to test for things like procedural memory, remembering how you got there, and your sense of agency, or the sense that you're the one making the decisions over your journey, right? So the way that we're doing this is we're running some experiments where we run some volunteers through a sort of course where they have to find a destination that they've never been to before, that they don't know ahead of time. Some of them use Expert, and some of them use something like Google Maps that tells them when you get here, turn left, you know, a traditional sort of navigation aid. And then we interview them, right? And again, what we're looking to find out is if they remember how they got there better and if they feel more involved in the journey, right? If they're more like an explorer than someone just sort of following directions. And so we've done that. We've done about 10 of these. We're doing a lot more this fall on UND campus, thanks to a grant from the College of Arts and Sciences. So thanks to College of Arts and Sciences for that. And so we'll try to run about 100 more through it, but I just want to share some pretty quick preliminary results, right? So these are some of the things that students said after using Expert to find their way through a thing, right? So here's one. This one we weren't really expecting, right? Like by shifting the modality, it turns out that students, or I shouldn't say students, subjects listened more to the things in their environment, right? So I could hear the birds. I felt like I felt the wind more. I could hear it and smell it. When I'm usually on phone apps, like taking directions, I have to be looking down and trying to understand what direction I'm supposed to be walking in. It's kind of a disorienting experience, and I don't get to experience my own surroundings. So that's one. Others said things that we were expecting, like this, right? I noticed I was using my memory of the campus. I felt kind of proud of myself because I realized I knew more than I thought I did. Usually whenever I want to get to a location, the first time I would need Apple Maps or Google Maps, and then when it's the second time, I'll still use it as a guide, and third, and so on and so forth. But this app actually, it was like mixing my knowledge with the application, like I'm trying to figure out a puzzle, right? So again, the idea here is it tunes them into their environment in a new way and allows them to sort of explore the thing, and they feel like they're more involved in the process. Okay. So that's just an example of using philosophy to try to imagine new ways of designing technology that might be more supportive of making humans intelligent rather than replacing their intelligence with some kind of artificial system, right? These are just the preliminary results, but I think they demonstrate what we're hoping to show, right? That there are alternative ways to design software beyond the device paradigm, and that doing so opens up new possibilities for human well-being, right? This happens because we're asking about the sort of tool that might help a human act intelligently rather than reducing the task to something that an actually existing AI system could help with, right? I think we should be doing this just about everywhere that we're encouraged to incorporate AI. Instead of asking, how can actually existing AI help here? we should be asking, what is it we are actually trying to do? How could we design a system to help humans extend their agency in that scenario, right? It's not always going to be the same way. Like, I think we need more task-specific apps, right? Exploration and answering emails aren't going to be dealt with by the same system, because yeah, it's just not like that. So I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all system that's going to help us. Assuming that there is, reduces our imagination, right, about the world and about what's possible. And it encourages us to shape our classrooms, workplaces, and social spaces to suit the needs of out-of-the-box consumer software, rather than the needs of the people using it, right? So that's that. My final point is that universities like this one and the humanities departments at those universities are pretty important and helpful for widening our technological imagination this way. And one thing I want to talk about very quickly is the MA in Human Technology Interaction that's beginning in this fall on UND campus. Here's some info about it, right? It's an online asynchronous program. Please email me if you have questions, or if you know students who might be interested, definitely send them my way. They get to take courses in these lovely disciplines that you see in front of you, and their scholarly project, I'm hoping, will get things like Expert sometimes, right? So students will develop new and interesting software themselves based on their own broadened imagination and trying to think about a future of human technology interaction that supports human intelligence rather than replacing it. So yeah, that's my talk. I hope it wasn't too long. I hope it wasn't too boring. I'll get out of the way and say thank you. And I don't know if there's time for questions, but yeah.
Hey, Mike, thanks so much. Hey, everybody online, how about a round of applause for Mike Butler? There we go. You remember the days of the pandemic? We always used to clap online, so we should do it again. Hey, let's open it up for questions. If you have anything, raise your electronic hand, and Mike will be happy to entertain your hardest questions. Ganapathy.
Yes, good afternoon, Mike. Thanks for that wonderful talk that you just gave. My focus in my studies involving artificial intelligence is on using AI for creative acts, and I've spent quite a bit of time using AI systems to create music. So it is a focal practice, like you said, where you have to make the AI system produce a musical piece based on your guidance. And in those kinds of systems, they don't quite work like the LLMs that you talk about, where it just predicts the next step in terms of what you have to do. It works with patterns, it works with precedent knowledge, it works with theory, musical theory, and all kinds of things. So it's almost like a strawman argument just to use the LLM and its specific way in which it does the creation of language to generalize what actually existing AI can do right now. Because I'm seeing all kinds of possibilities in the creative realm where AI systems are doing a lot more of the intelligent things that you seem to suggest.
No, absolutely. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to suggest that LLMs are the only actually existing AI. Like I said, like I'm trying to, what you're talking about is something that someone who knows how the system works and is really, an actual sort of AI researcher in your field, right? Is using it, right? And I don't want to suggest that you shouldn't use it, right? What I'm trying to suggest is that we shouldn't feel pressure as non-technical experts to use it in the things that we are good at. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't want to suggest that like I think actually existing AI is really good at some things, right? And really interesting in some contexts. But because it's good at some things in some contexts, doesn't mean it's good in all contexts. That's all my point is.
But given that language is the underlying medium of all our mental activity,
Yeah.
so we mediate everything through language. And
Yeah.
so a large language model, even though it has a different way of synthesizing the language, it has a direct impact on the full spectrum of our mental activity. And that is what needs to be studied, how the language synthesis is different in these artificial intelligence systems versus how we synthesize language and use it in our mental activities. Because
Sure. I don't mean to say we shouldn't talk about these things. I'm just saying we shouldn't conflate them, right? Like exactly the thing that you're saying, I agree with, right? Like what these things do is they show us specifically what we're not doing, right? But conflating just because it manipulates language, right? It specifically doesn't do it the way that we do it, I think, right?
Right,
And so
but
that's interesting, and you could think about that,
the
but
rigor
that
is
doesn't
not
mean it can be
the
used.
rigor is not there in parsing how AI systems synthesize language versus how humans do it.
What's that?
The rigor is not there in the parsing of how AI
Okay, well,
systems
look, I had
synthesize.
40 minutes here, so
Yeah, sure.
went from Aristotle to GPS. I don't know what you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah. Good.
And he can't hear you.
Next question is Ryan Adams. Thanks,
Great.
Ganapathy, for the question.
Really appreciate the presentation. You've given me an awful lot to think about. For the technical experts, the people that are actually writing the code and developing these things, I really, really like the mindset that you presented of trying to create tools that enhance or enable humanity to do what we do rather than replacing and considering that as what humans do when it really isn't. What I'm curious about is, do you have any resources that I can share with the CS and other computing faculty that gets them or can help them be thinking more in these terms while they're deep in the weeds of the code and all of that sort of stuff?
Oh, sure, yeah. You know what might be easier is just send me an email, and I'd love to talk about that. Like, I'd be really interested in talking like longer than we can talk right now about that, because I'd be interested in talking to you guys about that.
Yeah, I'd
What
love
you would
to
find
have you
useful.
speak with our CS folks and
Yeah.
data science and all of that. But I'm
Yeah.
just looking for resources that they can then use, perhaps bring into their classrooms, but at the very least get them thinking in a little bit of a different way than they typically would.
Oh, well, I mean, I can point you at a couple of people if
Okay.
that's helpful.
Yeah.
I think Shannon Valor is really cool, and she has a lot of sort of non-technical philosophy stuff that's aimed specifically at technical computer people.
Great.
So I think she's a place to look just off the top of my head. But yeah, I would be really interested in just talking more and finding out what you'd find useful in that context.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ryan. Other questions? Just raise your electronic hand. And if you don't, I'll ask a question. I'll go third. So Mike, you talked about the weak AI versus a strong AI. And
Yep.
I think our initial reaction is to say, hey, don't worry about the weak AI. However, that's where I've been placing most of my worries, that when you have narrow AI that's really good at something, that can pose important threats to humanity, I believe. So I think of AI that might interact with the financial markets or with critical infrastructure or cyber attacks or war, for that matter. I just wanted to get your thoughts on kind of that interaction, and I don't think we have to be concerned about just the general and artificial general intelligence, but these other forms of what you called weak AI as well. Any thoughts there?
So if I get your worry here, it's that there's sort of unsupervised AI systems out there that are making decisions that have real impacts in the world.
That's right, that are specialized. They're not general, but they still pose a risk to humanity.
Oh, absolutely. I guess I could just say yes. That is absolutely a worry. It's not so much what I was talking about today, but certainly that's something that courses in the MA, for instance, might go into, and certainly something that I talk about in other courses. But yeah, I think that's absolutely a worry. Like there's sort of 15 versions of the AI apocalypse, right? One is um, the world the one that just maximizes paperclip production or whatever, right? And it's in control of all the systems, and it just decides it's somehow in there that it's going to rejig the financial markets to do that, right? Like it's sort of is that the sort of where you're talking about? Like I think that's right? Like these things need to continue to be heavily regulated and supervised, but yeah. And ultimate questions of ultimate concern still have to be decided by people because so like the targets of these AI, the values they should be maximizing should be democratically decided, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Great, thanks for that response. It was a very general question, I realize. Madhavi, I think you can give us a preview of what's up for next month. I know we have another great speaker coming in this series.
I sure can. So first of all, thank you, Mike. Excellent. Always learn something new in coming over here. So I have posted the URL for the rest of the semester. We do have Dr. Jung He from the biomedical to talk about what he's doing with his research as well. Then we have Dr. Justin Weigard from Bismarck, and then, Dr. Weigard is from UND AI Forum. Shane Borkwish is from Bismarck, that is in November. And then we are going to finish off with data governance, topic on data governance by Infotech. That will talk about why data governance is essential for AI work that we are doing. I already have someone from NDSU for January. I'm looking for speakers for February through May. If anybody's interested, please let us know. And also any topics that you would be interested in as well.
Well, Madhavi, thanks for your great work pulling everything together. And Mike, thank you again for your insightful discussion. And good luck with the new master's degree and also with your exploration of these new technologies that bring the human experience more to the fore. So great job. We're delighted to have you today. To everybody who joined, thank you for signing in today and enjoy the week. We'll talk to you soon.